Brand new Fox polling showing the GOP is gaining ground in some key Senate races, specifically ones Republicans are looking to flip from blue to red in Indiana. Democratic incumbent Joe Donnelly has a 2-point lead over Republican challenger Mike Braun. The tables have turned since September. This Senate race in Missouri, a tie. Incumbent Democrat Claire McCaskill and Republican challenger Josh Hawley both have 43%, 6% still undecided. On to North Dakota. One of the most vulnerable Senate Democrats in the midterms, Heidi Heitkamp, now Republican challenger Kevin Cramer, taking a big lead. The poll shows Heitkamp is losing support from women voters and college graduates. Meanwhile, President Trump heading to Minnesota today, pushing for big wins there. What a morning, what a day it'll be. Bill is here to break it all down.
Yeah, I think very interesting numbers, Sandra. Just going to take our viewers through a couple possibilities right now here on the board as we try and examine this right now. You got a balance of power here in the U.S. Senate. You know where it stands right now. It's 51-49 Republicans over Democrats. Let's pop back out here one time here and show the breakdown. If you go to the maps and show... Let's go ahead and start this bad boy over one time. Hang with me. Here we go. Now we got it set. It's a learning process, Smitty, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's like getting a new iPhone. You know, you got to reprogram your brain. So here you are at 51-49. And the polling you just showed is very interesting because if Republicans are able to flip North Dakota from blue to red, that's a pickup. Maybe Missouri, blue to red, and now you see the numbers changing significantly. I don't know what happens in Indiana, but right now it's too close to call. Conversely, if Democrats are able to flip Arizona from red to blue, maybe you're looking at a scenario Republicans actually keep control of the Senate and gain one seat at 52-48. And that's not even to take into account what happens down here in a great race down in Florida with Rick Scott and up here in West Virginia with Joe Manchin. So all this stuff is going to go into the potion and the porridge over the next 5 weeks or so. The other thing I was looking at a moment ago, too, when we talk about the House race right now, up here in the Midwest, what we try to do is break it down according to regions. The president goes to Minnesota today. Well, half this state is considered a toss-up right now. We have 30 toss-up seats in the House right now. Could be a few more, could be a few less over the next 5 weeks, but right now in Minnesota, the 8th district up here around Duluth, the Iron Range, that's considered a toss-up. So is Minnesota 3, just west of Minneapolis here, Minnesota 2, southeast of St. Paul, and Minnesota 1, which is where the president will head today in Rochester, Minnesota. Half the state right now is considered a toss-up. That's just an extraordinary race that holds a lot of drama come election night in early November. Other thing, if you look deep into the Fox polling, very interesting findings here. If you look close enough, you could, go ahead guys, go ahead and give me that, perfect. Nationally, the president's approval rating is anywhere between 44 and 40%. But among these states that we just polled, look where his approval number sits. It's above 50% in Arizona, Indiana, Missouri, North Dakota, and Tennessee. And you have to factor that in. The other thing that we're looking at is the Kavanaugh nomination. Flip it one time. And this is what we found in Indiana, Donnelly, Missouri, McCaskill, Heitkamp, North Dakota. If they oppose Kavanaugh's nomination, are you more likely or less likely to support that candidate? All these numbers are slightly less likely to vote for Donnelly, McCaskill, and Heitkamp. So factor that in as we look at this debate going toward the weekend, Sandra.
Fascinating stuff.
This thing a test drive again shortly here.
Some clear trends showing up in that Fox polling.
A little bit.
Yeah. All right, Bill, thank you. Meanwhile, Melania Trump continues her trip across Africa. We'll have a live report on her most recent visit with students and her Be Best efforts. Meanwhile, top story of the day, all eyes on Capitol Hill. Senators look over the FBI's report on Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. What the White House is saying at this hour.
What critics want is a never-ending fishing expedition into high school drinking. That's not what the senators requested. That's not where this investigation's scope went. It went to serious allegations.
That's a little bit of pressure right now, but what more do you want? 26,765 for the Dow 30, so we'll keep an eye on the markets. A lot of questions right now about what you do with China, and tariffs and the trade, whether or not you get a deal coming up in Mexico.
Market goes down 60 points and you're...
Yeah. I'm just giving it to you.
Can't go up every day.
But here's what I want to tell you is that Sarah Sanders is coming up in 1 hour.
Yes.
So we'll get a better read as to the China discussion and we'll find out where we are in that debate, too. So stand by.
We look forward to that.
And I do think part of why Senator Flake and I thought this further background investigation was warranted was so that the allegations made by Dr. Ford and Ms. Ramirez could be further investigated and the result be either they are corroborated or the judge is cleared. I don't think enough people were interviewed to reach that full result.
That's Senator Chris Coons on Fox and Friends this morning. Meantime, new reaction from the White House weighing in as the FBI wraps its latest investigation into Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. And senators begin sifting through its findings. The president tweeted this morning. The harsh and unfair treatment of Judge Brett Kavanaugh is having an incredible upward impact on voters. The people get it far better than the politicians. Most importantly, this great life cannot be ruined by mean and despicable Democrats and totally uncorroborated allegations. John Yoo is a former Deputy Assistant Attorney General in George W. Bush's Department of Justice and a former General Counsel for the Senate Judiciary Committee. John, thank you for your time this morning. Things seem to be quickly changing. I know you've been following this minute by minute. What can you tell us about what you have seen and heard so far at this hour?
As you know, the FBI has turned over the supplemental background investigation, which is standard fare, to the White House, which has turned it over to the Judiciary Committee, and senators are now able to look at it in closed chambers, as it were, which is also standard procedure. I think now that the senators can see all the information related to these accusations, they have the constitutional duty to vote. They have to remember that they're not conducting a criminal trial, nor are they conducting an inquisition into every single thing that Brett Kavanaugh has ever done in his life. They are there to judge, is he a fit character to give their advice and consent to join the Supreme Court and as Associate Justice. I think they have all the information now that they need to do that.
You've already heard response from some Democrats, including Chris Coons. That was about 35 minutes ago that we heard from him. He's already making the case that not enough people were interviewed in this FBI investigation. What do you say back to that?
Well, I was in law school with Senator Coons. I was in law school with Judge Kavanaugh. We were all there at the same time. I think what we should all try to strive for is what the American people are striving for. As you saw in the poll results you just mentioned, what do regular Americans think is fair? And what Americans think is fair is that people should not be railroaded. They should not be stopped based on wild, uncorroborated allegations. Our sense of due process, our sense of fairness and justice, not just as lawyers or Yale Law School graduates, but as regular Americans, means that people shouldn't be harmed because others levy unsupported allegations against them. Now, you could say we should go on for years investigating Brett Kavanaugh, or months. He's already undergone 7 background investigations now. I think the FBI will have done its job to try to interview the accusers. They so far, according to the reports that you've just mentioned, they haven't found anything to corroborate these allegations. So I think it's time for them to go forward and vote.
John, stay with me here. A lot changing. We're getting an update from our chief congressional correspondent, Mike Emanuel. He is reporting, per a Judiciary Committee source, that the FBI supplemental report on Judge Kavanaugh is being held in the SCIF, the Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility. He's reporting that Chuck Grassley is being briefed right now. All 100 senators will have access, and majority and minority committee staff equal time. And again, that Chairman Grassley is being briefed at this moment. Just wanted to give our viewers and our listeners an update there. Did you have something to say on that, John, before I move on?
Well, as a former general counsel of the committee, I used to do that. I used to review these kinds of files and talk with the members about them. It's important to keep in mind those files contain uncorroborated, unexpurgated, sometimes wild statements by people. It's important to realize this is not a criminal trial. We're not trying to figure out the truth of the matter. The FBI is out there just to collect as much information as possible, present it to the senators. It's the senators who give constitutional advice and consent who have to judge the credibility of witnesses and statements and make a final decision about the fitness of Brett Kavanaugh's character to be on the Supreme Court.
All right, while that's happening, Dr. Ford has responded through her lawyer upon the completion of this FBI investigation, saying, quote, an FBI supplemental background investigation that did not include an interview of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, nor the witnesses who corroborate her testimony cannot be called an investigation. We are profoundly disappointed that after the tremendous sacrifice she made in coming forward, those directing the FBI investigation were not interested in seeking the truth. John?
I'm afraid, again, that is an example of someone confusing the FBI's role here and what's going on. They are trying to argue this is a criminal trial. It is not. The Senate already heard from Dr. Ford under oath, under threat of perjury if she were lying. What else is the FBI going to ask her that wasn't already revealed to the Senate during those hearings? And they are free, of course, to send things to the FBI and to the senators to supplement what Dr. Ford said during the hearings. But since she was already under oath, she already gave her testimony, it wasn't really necessary for the FBI agents to go back out there and to perform a second duplicative interview.
John, is it your sense, finally, that Judge Kavanaugh will go on to be confirmed to the Supreme Court?
I expect so. I think, again, American sense of fairness, that people should not be destroyed by uncorroborated allegations. Imagine if your brother, your father, your son were accused in the same way. We would not want their lives destroyed over accusations that couldn't be proven. And I think the American people will demand that their senators apply that same standard, and that senators will listen to them and will ultimately vote to confirm Judge Kavanaugh.
All right. And by the way, we didn't get to it, but a fascinating piece by Mark Thiessen putting out there that he believes prosecutor Rachel Mitchell may serve, as history looks back on this, as the pivotal person in the whole fight, saying that may have been a brilliant move on the part of Republicans. John Yoo, thank you for your time and your perspective this morning.
Thanks, Sandra. Good to be with you.
Meanwhile, the First Lady, Melania Trump, continues her trip through Africa, arriving a short time ago in Malawi at a school there where she visited with teachers and students. A moment ago, the president tweeting this: our country's great First Lady, Melania, is doing really well in Africa. The people love her, and she loves them. It is a beautiful thing to see. Paul Tilsley has that story. He's live in Johannesburg, South Africa, following the trip there. Paul?
Hi, Bill. The First Lady was definitely reminded how big Africa is after taking a 6-hour flight to Malawi in the east this morning from Ghana in the west. Today, the First Lady is continuing her work on her Be Best campaign, where she aims to shine, in her own words, a spotlight on successful programs and organizations that teach children tools and skills. The First Lady's Be Best campaign covers several aspects to do with the well-being of children and babies. In Ghana, she looked at healthcare, and today in Malawi, Mrs. Trump could be seen to really be enjoying herself. She said to the effect, "This is why I came here, spending quality time at a school for young children in the country's capital, Blantyre." The First Lady is a strong believer in the ethos that a better life and employment is a result of good education. The attention that Mrs. Trump brings to this impoverished nation is most welcome. More than half of the country's 17 million people live below the poverty line, according to USAID. This visit is a special moment for the First Lady and her Be Best campaign, as the children, inspired to have pride in themselves, have been shouting, "I am the best, you are the best." One final note: in Malawi, we are seeing more people coming out to wave at the First Lady's motorcade as she goes by compared to Ghana, but it's still only measurable in the hundreds, and it does include a handful of protesters. Bill?
Paul Tilsley, thank you. Watching that story there in South Africa. Thank you, sir, for that. 18 minutes now before the hour. Santa.
The New York Yankees showing off the bats in the American League. Win or go home. Wild card game. Outfielder Aaron Judge getting things started with the first inning 2-run shot, and the Bronx Bombers did not look back, defeating the Oakland A's 7-2 and advancing to the Division Series. They'll face their bitter rival.
Oh, baby.
You know who, the Boston Red Sox.
If you look real closely, you see Giuliani sitting behind home plate during that Aaron Judge home run. He said that ball was like a rocket. It's just out of here. All right, Fox News Alert right now, serving 30 years on the force. This is the officer who lost his life in South Carolina. But who is the suspect? More on that in a moment here, Sandra.
Well, senators, they can now see the latest FBI background check on Judge Brett Kavanaugh. We'll have more on how the entire investigation was conducted.
There's nothing in his background checks that suggest anything consistent with the allegations against him, and if they had been, they would have said something about it.
For the FBI, what is their mandate? What are they told to do? Well, and the process in these special inquiries called spins are that they do background checks. They're basically doing a background check for the White House for presidential nominees. They've done thousands over the years. Anybody who's ever been nominated for federal judge, and there's hundreds of them across the country, or a White House position has been through one. They do interviews and record checks. They are not investigations, and people need to understand that. They keep saying he's under FBI investigation. That means anyone that's ever been a presidential nominee was under FBI investigation, which has connotations that just aren't true. These are background checks.
Okay, we are told the original request from the Senate was to talk to 4 people, but that expanded to at least 9, maybe 10, according to our reporting from the White House. So they go to them, they ask the questions, they file the report, and they prepare that. Do they summarize it? What does that paperwork look like in the Capitol now?
There'll be summaries of the interviews on a form called FD 302. These are well-known FBI witness summaries. And they'll be put together. There'll be a sort of an executive summary on a cover sheet that will lay out the high points of it, but there'll be no opinions about credibility. There'll be no judgments about it. They will highlight some of the more important things that were said by the witnesses in that executive summary, and that's pretty much it. I mean, there's a lot of personal information in there, and in the main background check, where routinely they'll do 35 to 50 interviews of references and associates and that sort of thing. But in this follow-up, they're going to hone in on the allegations of sexual assault, and that's why they didn't interview 30 witnesses.
Okay,
they don't care about drinking in college.
I do believe in about 2 hours you're going to hear a lot of Democrats come to the floor of the Senate and say they should have talked to Dr. Ford again. How would you address that prior to that claim?
Well, I understand why they didn't, if they didn't, and that is that she had a full day of testimony in the Judiciary Committee, and her story is out. So presumably she told them everything she knew about the incident under heavy questioning by both sides of the aisle. So I think the FBI is thinking, or more likely the White House, Don McGahn's thinking is, there's just no need to go back and re-interview her. I think for optics, it might have been good to go back and interview her, but I don't think it would have gone well for her if they had.
Chris Wecker, thank you. Stand on by, okay? We may have more questions throughout the day and again tomorrow, okay? Thank you out of Charlotte today. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Stunning new video showing pedestrians running for their lives when a car jumps a curb and plows into this crowd, what police say may have caused the driver to lose control.
Hi, I'm Johnny Bench. Some days you wake up feeling like you've been hit by a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. That's why I use Blue Emu. Blue Emu's non-greasy, deep-penetrating formula gets down deep into those joints for big-time comfort and without any of that funky smell. Now that's what I'm looking for. Blue Emu. It works fast and you won't stick.
Surveillance video catching a horrific moment in California. Check it out. A car plowing into a crowd outside the famous Whiskey A Go-Go nightclub in West Hollywood. Wait for it. Right there. 4 people injured, 2 went to the hospital, minor injuries. Police say the man behind the wheel was a Lyft driver, had no passengers. He's been charged with suspicion of DUI and has lost his job. That from early Wednesday morning.
Meanwhile, this Fox News alert after a 2-hour standoff. A police officer is dead. 6 other officers are wounded. It happened in South Carolina last night. A man opening fire when police tried to serve a search warrant. The suspect is now in police custody. Jonathan Sari has been following the story for us. How did this all go down, Jonathan?
Well, it started as a routine investigation in an upscale neighborhood. Investigators with the Florence County Sheriff's Office were attempting to carry out a search warrant at a residence in the Vintage Place community just outside Florence city limits. But when they arrived, gunfire erupted, striking 3 deputies.
Fire was being shot all over. The way the suspect was positioned, his view of fire was several hundred yards. So he had an advantage.
Nearby police officers with the city of Florence rushed to the scene to assist the injured deputies. 4 of them were shot. 1 of them died. Police brought in an armored vehicle to rescue the injured officers. The suspect barricaded himself and several children in the home for approximately 2 hours before he could be apprehended. The children were not injured, Sandra.
Jonathan, what do we know about the fallen officer?
Yeah, he's been identified as Terrence Galloway, a 30-year veteran of the City of Florence Police Department. The police chief says not only was he a fine officer, but also a great friend, and he is asking for the community to pray for him and his fellow officers. Listen.
Pray for these officers and their speedy recovery. Pray for the family who lost the bravest police officer that I have ever known.
Authorities have identified the shooter as 74-year-old Frederick Hopkins. According to the Associated Press, Hopkins is a disbarred lawyer who has faced multiple charges in the past, including a 2014 count of disorderly conduct. Sandra?
Jonathan Siri, thank you.
Packed show, much more to come too. Straight ahead on America's Newsroom, new details about the FBI report on Brett Kavanaugh. When will there be a vote? Our headliner next hour, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. So come on back. We'll have it all for you, top of the hour.
Will be authorized to brief members. There'll be plenty of time for members to review and be briefed on the supplemental material before a Friday cloture vote.
Meanwhile, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's attorney has fired back saying this. An FBI supplemental background investigation that did not include an interview of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, nor the witnesses who corroborate her testimony, cannot be called an investigation. We are profoundly disappointed that after the tremendous sacrifice she made in coming forward, those directing the FBI investigation were not interested in seeking the truth.
With that as a backdrop, we have Kristen Fisher now back live on Capitol Hill. And
Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley and the ranking Democrat on that committee, Dianne Feinstein, they got the first crack at it when they received the report around 2:30 this morning. Now it's been opened up to all of the other senators. They are arriving here on Capitol Hill, starting to read it now. But, as of just about an hour ago, one key Democrat, Senator Coons, still hadn't seen it. Listen.
I haven't seen the report yet.
Right.
It is my expectation that there will have been FBI interviews pursuant to the scope that the Republican majority in the Senate delivered to the White House and conveyed to the FBI. And I am expecting that there will be some relevant and interesting information in this report today.
And when these senators arrive on Capitol Hill, they are greeted by protesters like these right behind me. These happen to be protesters that are pro-Judge Kavanaugh, but there are plenty of other protesters that are against him, and we are seeing these types of protests all over Capitol Hill, from the Supreme Court all the way up to their Senate offices. Bill?
there is only one copy of the latest FBI report. So how does it work? What's the procedure for senators, Kristen?
Yeah, Bill, so the procedure is, you only have this one report, and it's not something that you can email out. So these senators are having to go inside a secure facility inside the Capitol building. It's called a SCIF, and the way it's going to work is each party gets alternating hours. They get 1 hour increments. So Republicans are going to get to view the report for 1 hour, then Democrats. The Judiciary Committee chairman put out a statement. He actually put out a tweet explaining exactly how it's going to work. He says that, quote, Senator Feinstein and I have agreed to alternating equal access for senators to study content from additional background info gathered by nonpartisan FBI agents. So this is going to go on all day long, and what it does is it really sets up this procedural vote, which is set to take place likely on Friday, then the big confirmation vote on Saturday. But Bill, all eyes over the next few hours are going to be on those three critical Republican senators, Coons, Flake, and Murkowski, everybody waiting to see if whatever is inside that FBI report is somehow going to sway their vote, Bill.
Thanks, Kristen. Kristen Fisher on the Hill today. A lot of action there in Washington, clearly. Thank you, Kristen.
All right, let's bring in our A-Team, Fox News contributor Jessica Tarlov, David Avella, chairman of GoPac, Steve Hilton, host of The Next Revolution and author of the book Positive Populism, joins us now. David, to you first. Senators are getting a look at this now, and all we can do is wait and see. But what do you make of where we are at this moment?
lawmakers have for years, decades almost, said that while the minority gets their say, the majority gets their way. And this is time now for the Republican majority, along with Senator Manchin of West Virginia, Democratic senator, to confirm Brett Kavanaugh on Saturday to the United States Supreme Court.
Does that happen?
I think it will. I just want to pick up on the point that we're seeing play out exactly as predicted. When this renewed investigation was agreed to, everyone said, well, it's not going to satisfy the Democrats, whatever it is, they're going to move the goalposts. We're seeing that right now. And the thing that I'd love to know, and the question that needs to be asked of Dr. Ford's attorneys when they say, well, this is not good enough and we weren't interviewed, what exactly is the new information that they want to give, theoretically, to the FBI that they didn't give in the hearings? What is that?
Can I just jump in on that real quick?
New information, why didn't we hear it?
We did just get a statement from the chairman, Chuck Grassley. He got a look at it. You remember a few moments ago we said live that he was currently looking at the report. He has since put out a statement saying there's nothing in it that we did not already know. These uncorroborated accusations have been unequivocally and repeatedly rejected by Judge Kavanaugh, and neither Judiciary Committee nor the FBI could locate any third parties who can attest to any of those allegations. Jessica.
Right. Well, we've seen the pushback on that from people who went to Yale with Judge Kavanaugh, who have been trying to reach out to the FBI, haven't been spoken to about Deborah Ramirez's claim, for instance. You have Dr. Ford's lawyers that are saying this, but I do agree this is what we thought would happen here. This is a claim from 36 years ago, as credible and harrowing as I found Dr. Ford's testimony. I did think from the get-go that she would end up getting confirmed. And now, as a Democrat, all eyes on the four most vulnerable senators, Donnelly, Manchin, Heitkamp, and McCaskill. Now Heidi Heitkamp is down, I think, 12 points in her race in North Dakota. And we've seen polling where McCaskill is closer to Josh Hawley, but the voters are very clear that they will be less likely to vote for her if she doesn't vote for Judge Kavanaugh. So now, Chuck Schumer, what are you going to do? Are you going to let your senators vote for their constituents versus the party line so that we can try to save these seats and maybe pick up a Nevada or an Arizona?
You would suggest a Heitkamp and or a Manchin would vote
at this point. I mean, if the FBI report is as Chuck Grassley is representing it, and I'm sure it's probably not as extreme in that category, somewhere in the middle, you have to try to preserve the seats that you already have when we do have pickup opportunities in Nevada where we could get an Arizona seat. Right now, Democrats have about a 25 to 30% chance of taking the Senate back. We need that. And people are elected to represent their constituents.
I don't think this polling shift that we're seeing is just about how they vote. I think what you're seeing here is a real revulsion from people about how Democrats have behaved, about the politics of division and destruction that they've pursued, and the way that the mask has been ripped off the Democrats. And people just look at the way they're trying to divide the country and say, we do not want that. Regardless of how they vote on Kavanaugh, I think this will do lasting damage to them politically.
President Trump tweeted exactly that. Here's one of his latest tweets on Kavanaugh, talking about the harsh and unfair treatment of Judge Kavanaugh is having an incredible upward impact on voters. The people get it far better than the politicians. Most importantly, this great life cannot be ruined by mean and despicable Democrats and totally uncorroborated allegations.
I just flew in from Cleveland, Tennessee, Bradley County, highest voting Republican by percentage county in Tennessee. The message was very clear. I spent the entire day there yesterday campaigning with Bill Lee running for governor. Republican voters are angry. They are motivated. I actually talked with a member of Congress from Virginia in a very tight race yesterday where she said she's getting $50 and $100 donors. So it's not just major donors, it's small dollar donors, it's activists who are saying we cannot stand. We now know the reason why these 18 elections are so important. It goes to what Steve talked about. And now Republicans are well positioned to pick up 2 or 3 seats in the Senate. And we're back to having a battle for the U.S. House.
Mitch McConnell, late last night on the floor of the Senate, said the following. Roll this.
But I want to make it clear to these people who are chasing my members around the hall here, or harassing them at the airports, or going to their homes, will not be intimidated by these people. There is no chance in the world they're going to scare us out of doing our duty. This is now the seventh time the FBI the seventh time the FBI has looked into Judge Kavanaugh's background, and this information comes on top of what was already been one of the most thorough and most exhaustive Senate reviews of any Supreme Court nominee in the entire history of our country.
So as we move toward a vote tomorrow, procedurally, maybe Saturday, maybe Sunday, maybe it's kicked to Monday, was the 1 week delay worth it for the country?
Oh, I absolutely think it was worth it. I think that people need to have confidence in our institutions. There were a lot of people on both sides of the aisle who found Dr. Ford incredibly credible, which doesn't sound fantastic now that I put it together like that, and wanted this to happen. You had senators like Jeff Flake, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, who said that this was a must for them if they were going to vote to confirm him. He showed an issue, I would say, with the truth in his testimony about his drinking behavior, what went on top of the fact that there were a lot of Democrats who had issues with him during his normal confirmation hearings. You're hearing from Dr. Ford's lawyers that there were elements. I mean, doesn't everyone feel better about it?
For the process, was this
the whole process is good for Kavanaugh? Look, it's no. Of course, not good for Dr. Ford, not good for anyone, but there's one single party that takes the blame for that. It's the way the Democrats have handled it. That is why it's been so destructive. Their choice to do this in public, not to respect Dr. Ford's wishes, to have it handled privately. It was their choice to do that. They put the country through this, and they're going to pay the price for it.
You know, Carl, go ahead.
Same percentage that would have made this a bombshell FBI investigation is the same percentage of Democrats who would have switched their vote from no to yes, and that is zero. Not one Democrat was going to change their vote based off this FBI investigation.
Oh, I disagree with that. The senators that I was talking about in these states where Trump won 20, 30 points, Joe Donnelly was the first one to say we need this FBI investigation. These are people who voted for Neil Gorsuch, who is more conservative than Brett Kavanaugh.
But Donnelly's a no.
Joe Manchin
and McCaskill's a no.
Well, I would look what happens once this FBI report is out. I think that there is potential for there to be wiggle room for there. I know that they said that, but the second Claire McCaskill said she was a no, there was a huge backlash for her in her home state. And to your point, Steve, about the mishandling, I think there's a poll that shows that something like 75% of Americans think Dianne Feinstein mishandled this. But you are also seeing tremendous shifts of female voters towards the Democratic Party in the independent category. I think we're plus 19 right now.
We heard the exact opposite from Ronna McDaniel yesterday from the RNC, so let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
Joe Manchin, West Virginia is my home state. There are many people that I know that are close to Joe Manchin. He was willing to be the 51st vote if he had to be, because he knows it's the only way he loses re-election is if he doesn't vote for Kavanaugh. And just because he's been quiet doesn't mean because he saw this FBI investigation he was going to change his opinion. Joe Manchin has always been a possible yes, and Heidi Heitkamp is so far down she might as well be a no because she's not going to get re-elected, and she can be with McCaskill and Tester, who also probably are going to lose despite whether they vote yes or no.
Steve, the president weighed in again a few moments ago from the White House. And by the way, a reminder, Sarah Sanders is coming up in about 20 minutes on this program, so we'll get the latest from the White House. But President Trump just tweeted, this is a very important time for our country. Due process, fairness, and common sense are now on trial.
Yes, he put that very well. And I think as often happens, he seems to sense the mood of the nation and the common sense view of the nation in a way that a lot of people who are sort of caught up in the bubble of Washington, D.C. just don't give him credit for. And I think this is another moment when he's done that. And I think the establishment and the elites and all who thought this was all going to be so great for Democrats and this was going to be the sort of march of the resistance and so on, I think they're going to be looking really foolish in a couple of weeks.
Can I just add to this? I do think it's important to note the uptick in the number of women who have reported sexual assault in the wake of all of this. Sexual assault is I think it is the most underreported crime in America, and also has the lowest likelihood of fabrication. I think it's only 2 to 4% of sexual assault claims are made up. This is a serious issue for women across the political spectrum. I'm not just talking about Brett Kavanaugh right now. I'm talking about how important it is during the Me Too movement and just in general for women that we are having these conversations. Martha McCallum has been having these panels with fathers and mothers of all political stripes to talk about their concerns for their children. I know guys have kids, and I'm sure you think about these type of things. So that is an issue that has been raised.
Daughters and sons.
And sons, exactly. We've seen a lot of that rhetoric coming out of the Republican. Don Jr. said, "I'm more scared for my sons than I am."
Just said, and that's being considered, as far as I can tell, on both sides, very strongly so. Looking back, was there a better way your party, Democrats, could have handled this when these allegations first surfaced?
Well, I think that Dr. Ford was very clear, and I thought it was one of the best points that she made, that this was not partisan because she sent that letter in to her local representative before it was Judge Kavanaugh was the pick. There is a procedure built into the Senate for how this could have been handled, and for her own sake, she didn't want it to be public. I agree with you, Steve. It could have been handled better.
The message is, if you have something you want to tell a Democratic senator, know they're going to use it to their best partisan advantage possible. That's what we get out of it.
They used her as a political weapon, and they used it to further their campaign of division and destruction, and I think it's disgusting the way they've handled it, and I'm really fired up about it, just like so many people, and that's why I think it's going to come back, and they're going to pay a price for it.
Thank you, Steve, David.
Tune into the next revolution.
There you are, Sunday night.
Sunday night.
Thank you, good panel.
Thank you. Thank you. Meanwhile, in the midst of this confirmation battle, new Fox polling shows Republican enthusiasm in several key Senate races heating up, like North Dakota, where we're seeing a big swing for the Republican challenger Kevin Cramer, with Democrat Senator Heidi Heitkamp trailing by double digits there. Peter Ducey's live on the scene in Fargo, North Dakota. How important, Peter, is the Kavanaugh confirmation to voters there?
It's huge, Sandra, because the number of North Dakota voters in a new Fox News poll that say they're going to vote against Heitkamp if she votes against Kavanaugh is rising now. They've got 34% who say they are less likely to vote to re-elect Heitkamp if she votes against the confirmation. That is up 9 points in less than a month, and Republican challenger Kevin Cramer is taking advantage of Heitkamp taking so long to decide how she'll vote.
Taking a lot of time to announce the fact you're going to vote for him squanders all the political capital you could be gaining by announcing it earlier. If she waits until there are already 50 votes for him, then her vote, she'll demonstrate her vote doesn't matter.
Cramer now carries a 12-point lead in his contest against Cramer due to big swings toward him with women voters and voters with college degrees. Sandra.
Peter, is Heitkamp giving any hints about how she plans to vote on Kavanaugh?
Nope, not yet. And she is on Capitol Hill right now, keeping her position very private.
Cedric, I need to get to this meeting.
One challenge for Heitkamp here. President Trump has a 64% approval rating in North Dakota, but Democratic officials believe the president's trade policies are a liability for Republicans like Cramer here.
I think farming and trade are huge issues. It's something we hear an awful lot about. We're in the heart of harvest season right now. We've got people coming out of the field with soybeans every day. We're making sure that we're hoping that they have markets to go to.
Democrats say they have got the largest field operation ever in North Dakota working for Heitkamp, but according to this Fox News poll, they've got a lot of ground to make up to keep the seat. Sandra.
Peter Ducey reporting from Fargo for us this morning. Thank you.
We await new details from the Hill. There certainly will be leaks throughout the day. Already a few coming in. Senators now review. They can review the latest FBI report. We will find out how many make the option to go to the floor of the Capitol. Our headliner today is coming up in a moment here. Sarah Sanders is live from the North Lawn of the White House. We were told the president has a chance to see this as well, so we'll get to all those questions coming up shortly.
Look forward to talking to her. Plus, Vice President Pence about to take the fight to China over trade. We'll tell you how next.